What if tomorrow morning you woke up with exactly 1 extra hour, not because the clock changed, but because someone gave you a second chance? Would you use it or waste it like every other day? Every year, millions of people promise themselves, "This will be my year." But by February, most have already returned to the same habits, the same excuses, the same life. The truth is, people rarely lose because they're untalented. They lose because they keep spending tomorrow, before tomorrow even arrives. This is the story of a man who was given something money could never buy. 1 extra hour, every single morning, and the terrifying rule that came with it. At 32 years old, Daniel Mercer had mastered one thing: being busy. His calendar was full. His inbox never stopped growing. His phone buzzed every few minutes. People admired how hard-working he looked. But only Daniel knew the truth. He wasn't moving forward. He was running in circles. Every night, he collapsed into bed with the same sentence echoing inside his head. "I'll start tomorrow. Tomorrow I'll work on my dream. Tomorrow I'll call my parents. Tomorrow I'll take care of my health. Tomorrow I'll finally become the person I promised myself I'd be. Tomorrow, tomorrow, tomorrow." Without realizing it, he had spent 10 years borrowing from a future that never arrived. One cold November evening, Daniel took a shortcut through the oldest part of the city. It was a street almost nobody used anymore. The buildings looked frozen in another century. As he hurried through the rain, a tiny shop caught his attention. Its sign read, "Harrison Clockmakers." Oddly, the lights inside were still on. Curious, Daniel stepped inside. The room was filled with hundreds of clocks. Large clocks, tiny clocks, wall clocks, pocket watches, grandfather clocks. Yet something felt impossible. Every clock ticked in perfect rhythm. Tick, tick, tick. Not one was early. Not one was late. Behind the counter, an elderly clockmaker continued repairing an old watch without looking up. "You came later than I expected." Daniel frowned. "I'm sorry. Have we met before?" The old man smiled. "No, but your clock has." Silence filled the room. Daniel laughed nervously. "I think you've mistaken me for someone else." The old man finally looked up. His bright blue eyes seemed strangely familiar. "No, Daniel. I've been waiting for you." Daniel's smile disappeared. He had never told the man his name. The clockmaker reached beneath the counter and placed an old silver pocket watch in front of Daniel. It looked ancient. Its surface was scratched. Its hands had stopped moving. "I don't collect watches," Daniel said. "It's not for collecting. It's for remembering." Daniel picked it up. It felt unusually heavy. "How much?" The old man shook his head. "It's free," Daniel laughed. "Nothing is free." The old man leaned forward. "You're right. This one has a price, but you won't pay with money." Daniel stared at him. "What do I pay with?" The old man answered quietly. "Wasted mornings." Daniel almost walked away. The conversation sounded ridiculous, but something stopped him. Maybe curiosity, maybe exhaustion, maybe hope. As he reached the door, the old man spoke again. "If you carry that watch tonight, tomorrow morning, you'll wake up 1 hour before everyone else." Daniel turned around. "What do you mean?" The old man smiled. "You'll understand." Then he added one final sentence. "The extra hour isn't the gift. What you choose to do with it is." That night, Daniel placed the old watch on his bedside table. He felt foolish. "What am I doing?" He almost threw it away. Instead, he went to sleep. At exactly 5 a.m., the watch began ticking. Tick, tick, tick. Daniel's eyes flew open. The room was silent. Outside, The city looked frozen. No traffic, no birds, no voices. Even the wind seemed asleep. Confused, he grabbed his phone. 5 a.m. Everything looked normal. Until he looked outside again. A delivery truck stood in the middle of the road, completely still. A man crossing the street was frozen mid-step. Leaves hung motionless in the air. Time had stopped. Everyone was asleep, except him. Then, the old watch vibrated in his hand. A tiny piece of folded paper slid out from inside it. Daniel unfolded it. Only 7 words were written inside. Every borrowed hour demands one honest choice. Before he could understand what it meant, he heard footsteps upstairs. Slow, heavy, impossible. Someone else was awake. Daniel's heart began pounding. That was impossible. The entire city was frozen. Cars stood motionless. Tree branches refused to move. Even the rain hung silently in the air. So, who was walking upstairs? The footsteps grew louder, slow, measured, confident. Then they stopped. A knock echoed through the ceiling. 3 gentle knocks. Daniel swallowed hard, against every instinct. He climbed the old staircase. Each step creaked beneath his feet. The hallway was dark. At the very end, one apartment door stood slightly open. Warm light spilled through the crack. Daniel pushed it open. Inside sat an old woman, pouring tea as if she had been expecting him. She looked up and smiled. "You finally used the watch." Daniel froze. "You can move." She laughed softly. "So can you. Who are you?" "My name is Eleanor. I received my watch 40 years ago." Daniel stared at her. 40 years? She nodded. "And every morning, I wake up before the rest of the world." Daniel couldn't understand. "What is this place? Why is time frozen?" Eleanor looked toward the window. "Time isn't frozen. It's waiting." She handed him a cup of tea. "Very few people are trusted with an extra hour. Most never deserve it. Some receive it and waste it. Others receive it and become someone completely different." Daniel looked at the old pocket watch in his hand. "So, this is magic?" Eleanor smiled. "No, it's responsibility." She walked toward an old bookshelf. Hundreds of journals filled the shelves. Each one carried a different year. 1987, 1993, 2008, 2021. Daniel pulled one from the shelf. Inside, every page described one morning. Not promotions, not money, not success, just tiny decisions. "Today I forgave my brother. Today I stopped blaming my past. Today I chose discipline over comfort." Daniel looked confused. "That's it?" Eleanor nodded. "Big lives are built by small mornings." Before Daniel could ask another question, the old pocket watch suddenly ticked louder. Tick, tick, tick. Eleanor's smile disappeared. "You need to leave." "Why?" "Because your hour is almost over." Daniel looked outside. The frozen city had begun moving again. A bird finished crossing the sky. Rain started falling. Engines roared back to life. Exactly 6 o'clock. Everything returned to normal, except Daniel. The next morning, he woke before 5. Not because of the watch, because he wanted to. When the extra hour began, he didn't waste it. He exercised, read 20 pages, wrote down 3 goals, then sat quietly. For the first time in years, his mind wasn't chasing the day. It was leading it. Weeks passed. The changes were almost invisible, until they weren't. His co-workers noticed he never panicked anymore. His boss trusted him with difficult decisions. His family said he smiled more. Friends asked what had changed. Daniel always gave the same answer. "I stopped borrowing tomorrow." Nobody understood. But he didn't mind. Some lessons can only be lived. They can't be explained. One snowy morning, Daniel returned to the old clock shop. The sign was gone. The windows were boarded up. It looked abandoned. A nearby cafe owner noticed him staring. "Looking for the clockmaker?" Daniel nodded. The owner frowned. "That's impossible." "Why?" "That shop has been empty for 12 years. Daniel laughed. "No, I was here just last month." The cafe owner slowly handed him an old newspaper clipping. Daniel's hands began to shake. The headline read, "Beloved clockmaker, William Harrison, dies at age 81. Published. 12 years ago, Daniel felt the world spin around him. If the clockmaker had died 12 years earlier, then who had given him the watch? As he stood there in complete silence, the pocket watch suddenly began ticking wildly. Tick, tick, tick. Then, for the very first time, its hand started moving backward, and hidden beneath the glass, a sentence slowly appeared. "Tomorrow morning, don't wake up at 5. Daniel's breathing stopped. It was the first instruction the watch had ever given him. And somehow, he knew ignoring it would change everything. Daniel didn't sleep. The message inside the watch echoed through his mind. "Tomorrow morning, don't wake up at 5. For the first time, the watch wasn't giving him an opportunity. It was giving him a warning. The next morning, his alarm rang. 4:59 a.m. Daniel stared at the ceiling. Every instinct told him to get up. For months, 5 o'clock had become part of his identity. But today, he did something that felt impossible. He turned the alarm off, closed his eyes, and waited. When he opened them again, sunlight filled the room. It was 7:18 a.m. The watch had stopped ticking, completely. Panicked, Daniel rushed outside. The city looked normal. People laughed. Cars moved. Children walked to school. Everything seemed exactly the same. Until he reached his office. An ambulance stood outside. Employees gathered silently near the entrance. His manager saw him and slowly walked over. "You weren't here." Daniel frowned. "What happened?" His manager looked toward the building. "This morning, at exactly 5:07, part of the ceiling collapsed." Daniel's heart stopped. "The conference room?" His manager nodded. "You always arrive early. You would have been in there." Silence. The message hadn't been a test. It had saved his life. That evening, Daniel returned to the abandoned clock shop one last time. As the sun disappeared, the old wooden door slowly opened by itself. Inside, the shop looked exactly as it had the first night. Every clock was ticking, and behind the counter, the old clockmaker stood waiting. Daniel's voice trembled. "I thought you were dead." The old man smiled. "I am." Daniel couldn't speak. The clockmaker gently picked up another unfinished pocket watch. "People think I repaired clocks." He looked up. "I repaired people." Daniel placed his own watch on the counter. "So, was this all about saving my life?" The old man shook his head. "No. It was about teaching you how to live." He slowly opened the watch. Inside, where tiny gears should have been, there was only a mirror. Daniel looked down. For the first time, he wasn't staring at a machine. He was staring at himself. The clockmaker spoke softly. "Every morning, you thought this watch was giving you an extra hour." He smiled. "It never did." Daniel looked confused. "What do you mean?" The old man walked toward the window. "The extra hour already belonged to you. You simply kept giving it away. To distraction, fear, excuses, and the endless promise of tomorrow." The room fell silent. Daniel finally understood. The watch had never controlled time. It had changed his awareness. The miracle wasn't magic. It was attention. The old clockmaker handed the watch back. It no longer ticked. You won't need it anymore. Why? Because habits are stronger than miracles. A miracle can wake you once, but discipline can wake you for the rest of your life. As Daniel looked up, the old man had disappeared. One by one, every clock inside the shop stopped. Tick. Tick. Silence. The room was empty. 5 years later, Daniel stood on a stage in front of hundreds of young entrepreneurs. Someone in the audience asked, "If you could give us one piece of advice, what would it be?" Daniel reached into his pocket. The old silver watch was still there. It had never ticked again. He smiled, then answered, "People spend their lives wishing they had more time. The truth is, most of us already have enough. We just don't notice how much of it we quietly give away." He paused, looking across the silent room. Your future isn't hiding in next year. It isn't waiting after a promotion or after the perfect opportunity. Your future is hiding in the first hour after you wake up. The audience was silent, not because they were impressed, because they were thinking about their own mornings. Daniel looked at the sunrise through the auditorium window. For a brief moment, he could almost hear one final sound. Tick, tick, tick. He smiled, not because the watch had started again, but because he no longer needed it. Final life lesson. You don't need more time to change your life. You need the courage to stop wasting the time you already have. Every sunrise deposits 24 new hours into your account. Spend the first one wisely, and the rest of your life may follow.